We've already endured the National Football League and various Hollywood award shows like the Golden Globes and the Grammys get co-opted by the social justice warrior set. But can't I at least visit the bloody mall to buy some soap without receiving a sanctimonious sermon? Well, apparently not, at least not if one chooses to go shopping at a Lush store. Lush is a slang term for being overly intoxicated, but Lush is also the name of a global chain of cosmetic shops, and the Lush Corporation is seemingly drunk with self-righteous virtue signaling. Its most recent cause du jour is transgender rights. Here's the spiel.
I want people to know that
the way I choose to present myself doesn't make my identity any more or less valid.
I am 100% me, and there's nothing that you can do about it.
I'm non-binary, but that doesn't mean I'm confused about who I am.
No one identity or experience is the same.
My gender identity is a journey. I'm learning more the older I get.
My transition is none of your business.
Fall in love with hearts, not parts.
I am a person.
Trans rights are human rights.
Oh, very interesting, but consider this. How does Lush's campaign for trans rights dovetail with its unabashed support for the terrorist group Hamas? After all, in 2011, the social cause flavor of the day for Lush was going to bat for the Palestinian Authority, which Hamas controls. Indeed, you may recall One World, a group started by various recording artists, whose mission statement was to free Palestine from its Israeli oppressors. And with the help of the plagiarism-prone band Coldplay, One World launched a song titled Freedom for Palestine, which paints Israel as illegal occupiers committing crimes against humanity. But in addition to serving up more BDS BS, Lush was supporting the very same Hamas that targets members of the LGBT community for death. That's a little harsh, don't you think? So which is it, Lush? Do you support Hamas and all it stands for, i.e. discrimination against and persecution of LGBT members? Or is your support for trans rights merely confined to the planet's civilized neighborhoods? But if this is indeed the case, that Lush's transsexual campaign is meant for non-shithole countries only, then I'm not quite sure what Lush is getting at here. Is anyone in any Western democracy denying human rights to transsexuals these days? Because I'm pretty sure doing so is already illegal thanks to everything from human rights regulations to labor laws. Yet an uncomfortable question arises when it comes to so-called trans rights, namely, how far do we take it? For example, here are a few questions I put to the Media Relations Department at Lush, given its trans rights initiative. Number one, does your company back the right for a transgendered male to compete in various sports against natural-born women? Number two, does your company support the right of a transgendered male to work and/or reside at a shelter for abused women? Three, does your company support the idea that a male prisoner who is identifying as female should be able to serve his sentence at a woman's prison? Now, these are not hypothetical questions, folks. Rather, these queries are lifted from the headlines of today. So far, I've only received radio silence from the folks at Lush, but assuming Lush does indeed support those aforementioned initiatives, then what this company is effectively stating is that they're actually supporting the rights of a very tiny group at the expense of about 50% of the population. Yet Lush can't help itself when it comes to virtue signaling. Apparently, there is no righteous cause Lush doesn't want to embrace. For example, in the Australian edition of the Huffington Post, writer Juliet Steen lovingly highlights the myriad social causes Lush champions. For example, all Lush products are vegetarian, with a large portion being vegan. Which is good, I suppose, in case a foul-mouthed vegan is ordered to wash his or her mouth out with soap, I suppose. Then there's Charity Pot. I know that sounds like a scheme in which marijuana is distributed for free, but actually it turns out Charity Pot is a fund for worthy causes such as the Peanuts Farm, which provides care and rehabilitation for abused animals and nurturing for children from dysfunctional backgrounds. Now here's a beauty. Lush says it supports positive social and political change. And to affect social and political change, Lush will use their stores, their staff, windows, websites, and social platforms. This means essentially speaking out against climate change and embracing a pro-refugee policy, of course. Lush, according to that article, apparently also promotes ethical buying, meaning the company only purchases goods from suppliers who provide their farmers and factory staff with a safe working environment, and the company also collaborates with farmers around the world to start sustainable projects from scratch. That all sounds very good, but it should be noted that the fawning article, which was written by Juliette Steen, well, Miss Steen was flown from Australia to London to attend something called the Lush Summit. And who paid the freight for that trip? Well, none other than Lush Cosmetics Australia. Now, you don't really believe that a journalist that gets flown halfway around the world and is put up at a posh hotel on the Lush dime is going to be even remotely critical of Lush, do you? So while Lush is big on ethical this and ethical that, they don't seem to be all that big on ethical journalism. And another thing, as much as Lush likes to say it supports farmers, without whom its store shelves would be empty, is that really the case? Consider the logic-defying insanity that occurred at a Lush store in Michigan last year, in which a 17-year-old who works at his family's dairy farm was actually kicked out of a Lush store after an employee remarked that Lush, quote, didn't support farmers and stood against cruelty to animals, end quote. Only after this story was publicized did the company apologize for the young man's ejection. See, that's the thing about running a company based on social justice principles that can be at the polar ends of the ideological spectrum. Sometimes it gets a little messy, a little sticky. Gee, maybe it would be so much easier if Lush would simply just stick to the business of selling soap instead of sermons. And while they're at it, maybe they could use some of that soap to cleanse the hypocrisy from its corporate conscience. For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, download the new Rebel Media app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store to take the Rebel with you wherever you go.